Okay, where we left off last time, I had two things I wanted to do. I wanted to add a way to start a new game after a game is ended. And I did that, and that was keyed by the UI select, and pretty much anytime you hit the spacebar or any key, the game would restart, which is not ideal, because if you hit those by accident in the middle of the game, boop, goes your game. So, what I did was I added to the HUD level of the game, a color rectangle, so I can have that. And then to that, I added the node for a label, say, new game, and then a button, which I just put go on. I tried to resize it, but for whatever reason, I don't know if it's because of the font's wonky or whatever, but the button, I couldn't get that to center, but hey, that worked. Now, working with the button, well, the label, I had to put my fonts and stuff like that in, so that's down. Oh, you can't see because my face is in the way. Oops. There we go. Alright. Now you should be able to see down here. So, got the label, got the text, the new game typed into there. And you have to come down and go into custom fonts, where I added a new dynamic font. So click on that, we can dig into it, set the size of 20, and this is where I loaded in my file, which I like that. And it's just that stupid font I made for myself. And then just back up, and for the button, pretty much the same thing. Just, put the text in and then do the font stuff. Now, once you got your button there, your node, I just came in here, double clicked, pointed it to the HUD. So if we go into the HUD code, what it did was button press. Now, originally I had this UI select. So whenever which happens to be the spacebar there, and I think a couple other, their default values. So I just said game.newGame equal true. So anytime this HUD looped through this process and you happen to have hit the spacebar, new game, which allowed me to test the logic I had to put in for creating a new game, but then it's not ideal for continuing on. So I moved the new game down here. But then I had a problem, because when the game would start, let's go back to the HUD. This would still so when you started a new game, you played the game, it's fine, and then boop, it ended. Actually, let me go back. The loop that I had going was if the loop I had going was if the game health was 0, I would just go ahead and show the new game color rectangle. This whole node parent would just hide and show. But as soon as you click the button and you say, okay, hide, but in the meantime, while it's setting up the stuff to start the new game, this process would loop through and say, oh, I need to show the rectangle again. And so it would remain there for several seconds while the game started, and your player could be under it, enemies could be under it, you wouldn't be able to see what's going on. So I said, that's not good. So then after some experimentation, I decided I was going to say, well, if the so I added a variable, and I said, if the game health is ever over 0, then I can say start a new game is true, meaning you could start a new game if you can get to the button. But we're going to hide the button right off the bat, so whenever the game starts, it just starts and you start playing. Then when you get, then it'll signal you can start a new game after that point. So now that we have start new game, we can then check the health. If it's 0, then we have a situation where you can start a new game, and then I go ahead and show it, and then hide it once you press the button. I reset the start new game to false, and then new game gets set to true. Now I had to go into game and change a little bit here. Actually, no, I had to go into game and change some stuff because I was keying on health, and I figured out my bug, the one where the player would not show up after starting a new game. And I figured out what was causing that. It was a processing loop, which I figured it was something like that. But to get around that, I had to go into there. So I keyed on the health, and if we do fine on that, yeah, so this initializes the health for the player. But then when I start a new game, I had to go in and explicitly set the health. So I was setting it here, but the only time the player gets updated on health was when the player was hit. Yeah, right here. And when the player's hit. So it wouldn't when in a new game, after having made the player disappear, well, starting the new game, the player wouldn't reappear until the player was hit. That was the kicker. So I just explicitly called and set the health under the player, and then the player was showing up. And this is the code here under player. If the health is greater than 0, go ahead and show me. Otherwise, else, hide. So whenever the health is 0, it's gone. So until the process got to the point where the health would be updated, it wouldn't show the player. So that's basically it. And now the way it works, let me make sure my volume isn't too high. And see what. So the game, plays as regular. Wait until, yeah. Sometimes I think it might be faster just to, yeah. We should be dying certainly, and 1. Boom! Okay, new game. So the new game shows up. We can click the button, and boom. And keep playing. So that's basically it. I'm gonna stick a fork in it and call it done. This is what I'll do is I'll see if I can load up the source, and I went through the code and it didn't look too bad. It's obviously not perfect. I would do things very much differently, if I were to start this over again. I'm not planning on doing that. But I would definitely keep in mind things like, now that I have a much better idea on how these nodes and everything work, and signals, and, exporting values, I would, from the get-go, plan out a little more ideas on how I was going to be doing the displaying of the scores and controlling the whole game in general. So the way I did it, I learned a lot. I would recommend going ahead and just playing with Godot, and just start off with a very basic game and add stuff like I did, just so you can get an idea how everything works. And then once you know how not everything, shoot, there's so much to hear, it's not even funny, but at least when you get a general idea of how things work, you can then plan it out better and start a real game. Like I said, this would be totally different if I were started over. Now what my next plan to do is to actually go into 3D. And I've not done any programming game-wise or anything in 3D. So this is going to be a big learning for me. I'm not totally unfamiliar with 3D. I've been messing around with Blender and other things, so I know about the X, Y, and Z coordinates and those kinds of things. But actually creating assets for a 3D game, I've not done that, so I'll probably be doing some videos and trying to create, probably going to start off with the alien, make a 3D version of the aliens and I'm basically going to do a 3D version of the space shooter game, so it will be interesting. I hope to learn a lot, and so I'll start off with the aliens and then try to get them to move and then generate those as I need. Then probably create something of like an interior cockpit, something of the old 3D space shooters that were like polygon games. So be able to move hopefully in, up, down, right, left, and then probably give it some kind of thrust so you can control that. But like I said, that's my next project, and we'll see what happens. But so that's for now. Catch you later.